Welcome to the Belgian village of Gleize, and I am back here to look at some more then and now photos of Kampfgruppe Peiper's time here in the village and the wreckage that he left behind. The first image that I want to look at here in Gleize is a great shot of two Panthers. It's Panthers 101 and 002. Now, the view when I put the camera around will have changed a lot from when the photo was taken, the original, to now, because we've got the amazing December 44 museum with its extra part of the museum added onto the original building. But you can still see from the original building that the window placement's the same. There's also a tennis court in the way as well, so it does make it a little bit tricky, but if you use the building and then kind of imagine the rest of it, you will be able to see where this image was taken. This is the image, and we can see there, that's the view as it stands today in December 2023. The grey building with the 4 windows and a 5th smaller one raised up above in the middle between the 2 pairs is this building in the image. Just about where I'm standing on this tennis court was Panther 101, and in the background, in the distance there, was Panther 002. There's a great shot of these. You can see the muzzle brake has been removed on Panther 101 and that the engine hatch at the rear is open, and if they're anything like the ones on a Stug that I lifted up when I was in the Swiss Museum, those things are exceptionally heavy. You can also see all the spare track link on its turret and down the side of its hull on the side armour there, whereas by comparison, Panther 002 actually looks very clean, as it were. So that's this location in Gleize, just behind the December 44 museum. Now, the next image is taken also just by the December 44 museum, but it's now the car park that is opposite the church. And a little bit has changed because that war memorial behind me never used to be there during World War II, and you'll see that in a second. Now, I'll just navigate my way through the car park behind the lovely Christmas tree that they've got up at the moment, as it is December 2023, during the anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge. But that's the building we will be looking at, and it has changed quite considerably from the war. However, you can still see with the original archway, there's a lot of similarities there. And that is the image in question. Now that's Panther 111, and there's a GI sat just next to the war memorial there from the 30th Infantry Division. As I say, the front of this building has changed considerably. You can understand why though when you look at the war damage from all the bombardment that Gleize took during its time when Kampfgruppe Peiper were here. So they have altered it significantly, but you can still see the resemblance there with the archway and the window placement, if not the actual shape of the windows themselves. And I think that's a great image. The GI just looks so relaxed, just so happy to probably have survived through those initial contacts with Kampfgruppe Peiper. So that's the 2 images that I wanted to look at here in the December 44 museum / church area part of Gleize. Now we're going to head up to the main street that leads from Gleize to Stoumont. So we'll go and take a look at a series of then and nows there. So before we go to the main street, there's just a couple of images just down from the December 44 museum that I want to take a look at, and it shows a Panther next to a building and then it being recovered and towed away by an M4 Sherman. Right, so the first image I want to look at is that of Panther 114, and it was commanded by Unterscharführer Briesenmeister, and it was abandoned next to the Maréchal farm. And that is that building behind me there. That's the image in question. And we can see, although it is getting rather misty here in the late afternoon, but we can see it parked up there. And there's a few distinct features on the tank that we can make out. So the commander's cupola is open, and there is also spare track link down on the side, on the left-hand rear side of the hull, which is just visible. And that's the view today down into the valley below. Now, it's fair to say that the Marichal building has undergone a significant amount of change in the intervening 79 years from when this image was taken, but it's the second image that validates the position here of Panther 114. This is the second image of Panther 114, and we can see that it's being removed from the Marichal building by that Sherman. And we can see it's the same building, albeit the extension on the left-hand side has shifted. What was probably once like a small outbuilding is clearly now part of the main building itself. But if we look back to the original image, we can see here this white building, and that is that building at the end of the road there, just behind Tiger 213, that is now part of the December 44 museum. And now from there, we're going to go and take a look at some of the other images from the village of Gleize, but on the main street. Now, the first image that we're going to look at is that of an up-armoured reconnaissance jeep. And it's a great photo, but ironically, the house now in 2023 that it was photographed in front of looks older than it did 79 years ago. And you see what I mean when I show you the image. So here we have the original wartime image, and that shows an up-armoured reconnaissance jeep. It's got armour plate over the grille and over the driver and assistant driver / gunner's position, and it's got a big 50 caliber machine gun mounted in the assistant driver's position. But then if we look at the house now in 2023, you'll see what I mean by the fact that it looks a lot older now than it does from 79 years ago. So the second image in this part of the village of Gleize that I wanted to look at is of Panther 123, and that was commanded by Oberscharführer Strelo. Now, I've had to come to this side of the street to try and get the proper view of it. If I was closer, I'd probably end up getting run over, as Gleize, believe it or not, is quite a busy village. Although it's tiny and it's very quaint, it is the main through road from Trois Ponts down to Stoumont and beyond, so you get a lot of traffic through here. Now, the location in question is just over my right shoulder there, just in front of where that massive tree is grown. And the Panther was parked up just on a mound of earth next to a house. Now, this is the image of Panther 123, and it's parked on this very busy junction here. Now, there's been a lot of remodeling done to that house for obvious reasons. As you can see, it underwent a lot of damage during the war. But it was just there behind me where Panther 123 ended its war here in Gleize. So now, just walking up the main street in the direction of Stoumont through the village. Behind me, that building, that was Peiper's headquarters whilst he was here in Gleize. That's where he directed the battle from after having to withdraw to the village here after his Kampfgruppe was stopped cold at Stoumont Station by the men of the 30th Infantry Division and the supporting armour that was there with them. And it's late afternoon on December the 17th, 2023, as I'm filming this, and you can probably start to see the mist and the fog is rolling in, and it's incredibly atmospheric. And this is why I absolutely love coming to the Ardennes. I never get tired of being here. There is a mystique about this place, about the battle that took place here. Now, that isn't to take away from the absolute horrific conditions that the men had to endure here, and I'm well aware of those. But the countryside here, the weather, it hasn't really changed a lot. So for a history nut like myself, being able to walk the ground here, you get such a good idea of just what the atmosphere was like. And that, for me, is one of the real big buzzes that I get from here, as well as finding these then and now locations. Now, for this then and now, I'm going to try and get the best possible angle I can. From the looks of it, the original was taken pretty much in the middle of the street, so I'm not going to risk that, but hopefully we can get the right position or thereabouts. And here's the image in question. It's one of Kampfgruppe Peiper's SDKFZ 251s, and you can see that it has sustained a lot of damage. The whole engine compartment is blown apart. Now, we're actually quite lucky. Where I'm stood was where the image was taken. we've got the building to the right in the image, and then two very, very identifiable buildings with the hillside behind them. Firstly, this one, and then that one in the distance. And that's the image as it appears today. Now, for the next two images of another one of Peiper's Panthers that was knocked out here, I've just got to cross the road. And we're staying in pretty much the same location because the SDKFZ 251 that was in the previous image also appears in the next two. Now, the next two images were taken from the same spot, and they're almost a little bit of spot the difference. They're very similar images. They were probably taken just a few minutes apart, but I think they're both noteworthy, and we should look at both of them. Now, here's the first. We can clearly see there on the left the SDKFZ 251 that's all burnt out and destroyed, and then a group of GIs mingling down, and there's one of them on top of the Panther there. And this was clearly taken after the Americans had liberated Gleize, and I think it is a wonderful image. Now, the Panther in the background is that of Hauptscharführer Knappich, and it's Panther 221. But if we lower the image and you can see what it looks like today, there are definitely a lot of similarities still. The three buildings there to the front, the big one with the 6 windows and the 2 round ports at the top, then the white one, and then the one next to the small green tractors. They are still visible today in 2023. Now, there's been some changes, as you'd expect, over the intervening 79 years, and you have to remember that Gleize was heavily shelled by the American forces as they attempted to squeeze Peiper and his men in the pocket here and try and collapse in on them and destroy them. Now, as I said, there's another image as well, and again we can see the 251 there on the left, but in this one we've got a Jeep coming up the road, and it's got one of the angled iron wire cutters welded to the front of it. And I just think, again, it's just a really cool image. You can see the men there still climbing over Panther 221, and yeah, just another iconic image that was taken in the village of Gleize in late December 1944. So for the final two images of this Then and Now episode in Gleize Part 2, they are still of Panther 221, but they show it up close, and I think they're really, really cool. So we'll just cross back over the road and we'll take a look at them. So in the previous two images taken further up the street, we could see the buildings that were behind me there. Now, in this image, we're a lot closer to the Panther, so let's take a look at it. So there's the image, and we can see at the front there's a huge length of track laying on the floor, again with a load of GIs all over Panther 221. And that's as it appears today. That small building next to 2 green tractors is still very much in place and still very visible in this image. Now, the final image of 221 is a bit of a tricky then and now. I'm not going to lie, there's been a lot of changes to the opposite side of the street, but I think the image is worth showing, and we do know that it is Panther 221. We know where it was parked from the previous 3 images, so it is still worth a look, but it just shows you how much a village that's been involved in conflict can change over 79 years. Now, maybe an obvious statement, but clearly there are a lot of places that have remained the same, but this one is very much altered. Now, there's the image. You can see the men clambering all over it. It looks like 221 has taken some rounds to the glacis plate there, but that might have been from the GIs just shooting it up just to see how effective their anti-armour weapons were. But if I pull the image down, that's the opposite side of the street now in 2023. So that was my final then and now image from the wonderful village of Gleize. It is without doubt one of my most favourite locations here in the Ardennes. I think it is iconic, and it encapsulates the struggle of the Americans versus the notorious Waffen-SS so well. And because there were so many iconic photos taken here, if you're retracing steps and trying to find then and now locations, it is a wonderful place to visit. And I hope you've enjoyed this second part to Gleize. I filmed the first part in February 2023, did a few images then, but it's great to have come back in December during the anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge and filmed more then and nows from this iconic town. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of World War II Wayfinder, back here in Gleize for a second time in 2023, looking at then and now photos of the momentous events that took place in this tiny Belgian village. If you've enjoyed the episode, please go and check out part 1, which you'll find in my Battle of the Bulge playlist. And don't forget to like this and share it if you can. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Okay, I'll see you all in the next one.